Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for EyeSpy 2020 Vision Screening and Data Managed Training. I hope you're all having a good afternoon. So my name is Monica Hecker, and I will be moderating today's webinar. I think we have a few more people joining us. If you are participating with us through a GoToTraining, your screens may look a little bit different, but on the right-hand side, you can raise your hand to ask a question, and we always encourage comments and questions throughout the webinar. Everyone will be muted out, but any questions that you type into the question sidebar, we'll make sure that we answer for you. And if you're logging in from a web-based interface, your screen may look a little bit more like the one that I've got up right now. You can see there. So a little bit about me. My name is Monica Hecker, and I am employee of VisionQuest 2020. And what we do is we offer the training and support for the EyeSpy 2020 Vision Screening Program. I'm a certified teacher with 10 years of teaching experience. I've taught first and second grade and also junior and seniors in high school. And I'm a certified hearing and vision screening certified hearing and vision screener. So I'm happy to have you all join us today. Today's webinar, we're going to discuss several topics. We're going to talk a little bit about the impact of vision problems and the vision screening dilemma, but we're mostly going to focus on the difference between vision screenings, objective and subjective vision screenings, and how EyeSpy 2020 solves the issues that have been plaguing vision screenings in school districts for quite some time. And let's see, we can move on to the next screen. So a little bit about EyeSpy 2020. EyeSpy 2020 was developed by Dr. James O'Neill, a pediatric ophthalmologist and children's eye surgeon, and by Richard Cherendi, a software and engineer developer. And Dr. O'Neill and Richard Cherendi spent a good 3 years studying why children were being falling through the cracks or not being identified with vision disorders that affected their ability to learn and perform academically, but also vision disorders that were being missed that could lead to permanent irreversible blindness, such as amblyopia. And so after studying this issue in hundreds of schools over a 3-year time, they got together and developed EyeSpy 2020 to solve the issues that they had encountered. And so what came out of that was EyeSpy 2020, and we're going to learn a little bit more about it, but it's an easy, fast way to vision screen. It vision screens for all of the major and severe vision disorders that can affect a child's ability to learn. So I'm going to give you to Richard Cherendi a little bit about VisionQuest. We're the ones that do the training online if there's any confusion about that. So.
Okay, I hope everyone can hear me okay. Thank you, Monica, for moderating today's webinar. And like Monica already mentioned, we really do encourage you to participate through the chat box or raising your hand. So at any point along the way, if you have questions, you want me to slow down or speed up or cover something a little bit more thoroughly, let me know or let us know. And we'll be pausing. There's a couple of moments throughout the presentation where we'll purposefully stop and make sure that there aren't any pending questions. As Monica already mentioned, I am the co-developer of EyeSpy 2020, the vision screening software that we're going to talk about today, along with Dr. O'Neill. And it is definitely a privilege to have developed this technology, and I hope that after today's webinar you'll see that it is extraordinarily different from anything else that is currently available to detect vision disorders in children. So with that, I want to start off talking a little bit about the impact of vision problems, and I understand that in some instances, in fact, perhaps most of you are already experts when it comes to the impact of vision issues in children. Vision problems are unfortunately extraordinarily prevalent, And really, vision problems impact virtually every facet of a child's life, specifically or significantly when it comes to their educational performance, unless you know a child has a vision disorder. So in other words, of course, blind people are more than capable of learning. The real issue exists when you have a child sitting in the classroom that has a vision problem and no one knows. And unfortunately, low-income children and children that are already experiencing problems academically are disproportionately affected by vision problems. So it's like adding insult to injury, for lack of a better term. I'm not going to spend too much time going through these scientific studies, but I wanted to share a couple things with you before we jump into the current state of the art when it comes to vision screening. So, you know, we've got about 20% of kids out there just in this country that are suffering with uncorrected vision issues. And this is because they're simply unknown. These are undetected vision issues. And as I alluded to earlier, it is extraordinarily frightening when it is understood and well understood that 80% of what children learn comes through the visual processing of information. So again, we're really stacking the odds against children in the classroom that can't see the teacher or the blackboard or the whiteboard, whatever they have in classrooms these days. And unfortunately, these vision problems are often misunderstood and misinterpreted as learning problems. So to carry on with that, there was another study over 10 years ago that looked specifically at a vision problem in convergence insufficiency. And what they found was that these children that had CI were very often misdiagnosed with ADHD. And in some instances, it actually exacerbated the symptoms. So again, we're talking about adding insult to injury for kids that are already struggling. And then I'll just share with you one more article, and then we'll jump into some other things. But amblyopia is a very challenging condition to detect, and I can talk more about that if you're interested. But suffice it to say that amblyopia is a challenge. There are many amblyopic children, and simply no one knows because, quite simply, one eye can see clearly and the other eye can't. And this has been shown to have a tremendous impact on children's ability to read. So I want to share with you something that's very interesting. The state of Michigan every 2 to 3 years goes out and does a study where they look at and very closely evaluate the return on investment for all of their publicly funded preventative health programs. I think that's actually a very laudable goal. I wish more states did this because it's always good to know, you know, whether or not you're spending the taxpayers' money appropriately and deriving maximum impact from expending those resources. But each and every time they do this study, this is a study from 2013, and they consistently find that vision screening returns the highest ROI. The highest return on their investment is from vision screening programs. In fact, it's well over $150 for every $1 spent. And in the state of Michigan, they spend about $4.71 per child just vision screening children. That doesn't include anything else. That's just the active vision screening. So even at $5 a child, they're finding an extraordinary return on that investment. And I just want to share that with you. And I'll talk later. All of these articles and resources that I'm sharing with you are on our website. And I should also mention that we are recording this webinar. So if you're unable to take notes right now, don't worry about it, because this will be posted on our website for you to play back if you're interested. So I'm not going to dive into this too much, except to say that what we have tried to do is make available a tool that very conservatively estimates what school districts will enjoy as far as a return on their investment in the EyeSpy 2020 vision screening technology. This is a tool that's available to all of you. The link is at the top of the page there. And again, we'll make this available. You can log on at any point in time, enter in your state, the size of your district, how many students you have, and then it pulls information from the National Center for Educational Statistics and provides you an estimate of what the cost of retention is in your district, and then you can enter in a value for what you estimate, conservative or otherwise, as far as how much retention would be eliminated or prevented if you were able to accurately and reliably detect those students that have vision problems. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but you're more than welcome to contact Vision Quest after this webinar, and if you want to talk about this further or evaluate potential ROI further. So at this point, Monica, do we have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions typed into the chat box, but please feel free to ask questions during the webinar. We make sure to answer them for you. Thank you.
Okay, so let's really quickly talk about how screening's been done. And again, I apologize for those of you that already have a significant expertise in this area. My intention is not to preach to the choir, so this may be redundant for some of you, but many people don't realize that, up until this point, there's really been no standardized approach when it comes to vision screening children. And as a result, it is very safe and fair to say that conventional methods simply are not working. This is simply evidenced by the fact that the statistics that I shared with you earlier, right? So we've got 20% of kids that are running around with undetected vision problems. And there's actually a litany of statistics that support that the way that we have been vision screening is insufficient. No adult would have monocular blindness in this country if our current approach to vision screening was sufficient. Having said that, the way that most children are vision screened is through a wall chart, or reading an eye chart that is stuck up on the wall, and you stand 10 feet away and you read back the chart to whoever's proctoring the exam. Again, I know that you guys are already familiar with this. As you know, in order to vision screen reliably, certain states require certification. Even if your state doesn't require certification, there's an extensive amount of training. And in fact, I'm going to show you that in just a second. But at the end of the day, we're talking about an approach that relies very heavily on human interpretation. And then on top of that, you have to spend an inordinate amount of time with the record keeping and the reporting to parents of the results. So this is just a laborious and time-intensive process, to say the least. When we talk about why vision problems are missed, and again, this isn't to beat up on the wall chart, but the fact of the matter is that this is an approach that has been used for over 150 years. And at the end of the day, what we have to recognize, if we're being intellectually honest, and for those of us at Vision Screen, we actually see this. Children can easily peek and even more easily memorize the eye chart. So when you then test them at the wall chart, they're able to pass the vision screening. And this is extraordinarily problematic. And it's very expensive for school districts because we're spending a lot of money just on retention. And there's other costs as well when we have students that are needlessly struggling. And then, like I mentioned earlier, it's labor intensive from a data collection standpoint. So when we talk about the extensive training that is required, what I've got up on the screen right now is the 9 pages that comprise the amblyopia treatment study visual acuity testing protocol. And I know that that's a mouthful, but this study is the most rigorously validated approach to assessing a child's visual acuity using optotypes or a wall chart. And it is extraordinarily complex, and it takes a very long time to do this. And by the way, in all fairness to all vision screeners, I don't know how they do it, because you have to watch the child like a hawk during the entire process to make sure that they are not peeking, to make sure that they haven't memorized. It's that whole human interpretation thing. So not only do you have to commit to memory a very complicated protocol, that, by the way, is executed slightly differently on each individual child. You know, this is a laudable goal, but it is quite challenging for those of us that have done this. So I'm obviously building up to something, right? I want to show you EyeSpy, but before I do that, I want to talk about some of the thought process behind EyeSpy, because there are two medical organizations that have jointly authored a statement that is very clear when it comes to how we should appropriately vision screen children. And so the AAP, which is the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the American Academy of Pediatric Ophthalmology and Strabismus, also known as APOS, they got together and they said, look, in children under 3 years old, instrument-based vision screenings are completely acceptable. And I'm going to talk about what an instrument or objective vision screening is in just a second. But they've also made it very clear that by the time the child is in school, so for children above 5 years of age, there is absolutely no question that you need to be doing a subjective screening. And I'm also going to tell you why they make that recommendation, because I just got done sharing with you all of the shortcomings or challenges associated with doing a subjective screening. So then why in the world would these organizations stand by that and say, but this is still the right thing to do? So that's what I'm going to talk about. An objective screening or an instrument-based screening. These techniques and these devices are amazing. Now, they cost a lot of money, but they're amazing devices. They're very, very easy to use. You don't have to be certified to operate these devices. It's very similar to operating a digital camera. In fact, that's pretty much what they are. But what they do is they take measurements of the eyeball, okay, and then they evaluate those measurements for risk factors. Now, that is an incredible piece of engineering. And so as a fellow technical geek, I'm very impressed, and in fact, I'm very supportive of the use of these objective devices on children that cannot get a subjective examination. But it's very important to understand, these are looking at the child's eyeballs. It's not looking at the child's ability to see. Okay, so what is a subjective screening? A subjective screening is very similar to what happens when you go to the eye doctor, for example. They sit you down in front of, in this case, a phoropter, and they show you different lenses, and they have you read the eye chart, and you say, oh, that's better, you know, A or B, B or C. All of us, or most of us, have been through that process. I mean, what we're talking about with a subjective technique is subjective, where you're dynamically interacting with the patient to evaluate their entire visual system. Not just the eyeball, but the optic nerve, the vision center, and even the vision center of the brain, the cognitive processing, the neurological function. What ends up happening, if done properly, you're evaluating or determining that child's ability to see. Now, keep in mind, all the shortcomings that I just mentioned still exist, right? You've got to be extensively trained, and there is a lot of human interpretation that's involved. But it's still the right thing to do. And by the way, it takes time to administer. And again, preaching to the choir, so I apologize. But diagrammatically, if you were to look at things, what we're talking about is an objective screening is looking at just those two perfectly round eyeballs. But a subjective screening is looking at the child holistically, which includes the optic nerve, the wiring to the visual cortex of the brain. So we're looking at the entire visual system. And this is a huge and significant differentiator between the two approaches to vision screening. And it is this diagram that is the reason for AAP and APOS to say when a kid is 5 years or older, that is what you need to be evaluating. Because you can have a child with perfectly healthy eyes that cannot see. So, Dr. O'Neill and I, now Dr. O'Neill is a pediatric ophthalmologist. He already has an expertise in vision. I, on the other hand, have multiple engineering degrees, but am not a doctor. We spent an inordinate amount of time, particularly I did, really trying to understand childhood vision. Not just medically, but much more completely, or again, holistically. And the result of that was recognizing that if we were going to develop a technology that was going to revolutionize the way that we detect vision disorders in children and ultimately have a significant impact on children's lives, there was a whole litany of things that needed to happen. And I won't bore you with that, except to say what we realized was that we had to automate a subjective vision screening. That had never been done before EyeSpy. And to this day, EyeSpy is the only fully automated subjective vision screening tool on the planet. And in the process of a child playing a short game, 2 to 3 minutes, we are able to very accurately and reliably assess a child's visual acuity, their depth perception, as well as color vision. And you'll see that in a couple minutes when I demo the game. So in addition to its ability to assess these various qualities of a child's vision, we also really built this technology for schools. So it was very important that we help nurses and schools where we were able to. So, for example, the reports are instantaneous. You don't have to wait for someone else to do the evaluation. The reports are immediately available. They're available in multiple languages. When you receive a license for your school or your district, you can install this software on as many computers as you want. So if you want to install it on 5 computers, that's your prerogative. If you want to install it on 100 computers, do that as well. Obviously, the more computers you have it installed on, the more children that you can vision screen at any given point in time. It's also really important to realize that it's a video game intentionally, and that is because one of the things that we learned throughout this process is that children have a little bit of fear about failing a test, particularly those children that have a vision problem. It's ironic, but it's the truth. And so what happened is that we saw time and time again where it was the very children that had a vision problem that were so creative and adept at cheating the system. So by making it a video game, we remove the psychosocial trepidation that they have inherently in the vision screening process. They're just playing a fun game, and there's no negative reinforcement. So from their perspective, it's just a simple matching game, and they're having a fun time. It's a software program, so it can't be broken, and of course, there's a whole data thing that I'll talk about in a couple minutes. But if we're looking at things at the highest level from a qualitative perspective, this is a randomized vision screening, so children simply can't cheat the system. They can't memorize the game because it's different every time. All of the protocols are computerized, so you don't need any specialized training. It's compared to a traditional vision screening, it's much faster and cost effective, and in part it's because it automatically collects and reports all the vision data for you. So we developed this technology, but we didn't want to do this in a silo. So we involved many people along, along this development roadmap. And then what we did prior to releasing it for public consumption is we had it independently and medically validated at the Storm Eye Institute. And so the reason why that is of significance is because this is something that was completely voluntary. This is not a technology that is, regulated by the FDA, for example, or the National Eye Institute. So we wanted to do this on our own volition. We knew that this technology worked based on the tens of thousands of screenings that we had done internally. But when we sent it off to one of the top ophthalmic clinics on the planet, we were stunned by the results. Because what they found was that there was no significant difference between this EyeSpy 2020 vision screening technology and a professional eye examination in the determination of children with vision problems. So I want to make sure that I'm clear on this because I don't want to misrepresent the findings. This is not at all to suggest that EyeSpy is or will ever be a replacement for a full eye exam. That is absolutely not what this is. But what it is extraordinarily accurate, very reliable. And we know this now because since late 2010, this was published in October of 2010. So since that time, we have used this approach, or schools have used this approach, this technology, exact technology, EyeSpy 2020, to vision screen over 500,000 children. So I'm about to show you a demo of EyeSpy, and I'm going to go through that very quickly. But before I do, I want to kind of paint a picture of what you're seeing with regards to the data management, because that's, again, one of the huge benefits of EyeSpy, is that not only is it accurately screening your students, but it's also helping you, the school, manage the data. And so it does this in a centralized HIPAA, FERPA compliant database. Only you have access to your vision screening data. Now, I will say that the aggregated data, without any personally identifiable information, is available to us. And that is for purposes of epidemiologics analysis, and it's also to ensure that we are constantly monitoring the efficacy of the program and improving it each and every year, which we do. So the data is stored for you, and then at any time you want to access your data, you can pull individual screening reports, summary reports, you can dump the data into Microsoft Excel, and you can even export it into other databases that may be employed by your district. So we're not holding the data captive at all. It's yours, and it's yours in perpetuity. So what I want to do real quickly is I want to show you just a very, I don't want to go through too much detail with regards to how to use the software, because I don't think that that's necessarily the point. What I would say is this, is that the process of vision screening a child in its most complex form requires you have to input, for example, your name. So I'm going to type my name here, and I'm going to put the student's information here, okay? And this is the extent of what it takes as far as from a training perspective. If the child was born July 15th of 2010, you can see I'm just typing this information in, select their grade, and moving through the process just like you see here. So we're talking about something that's about that fast, 10 seconds, 15, 20, whatever it is, okay? Or what you can do is you can select the student from your roster. So your IT department, the gurus in IT, there is a process by which they can import your students into EyeSpy. And when they import your students into EyeSpy, they're available on all of the computers on which you have EyeSpy. That's also one of the advantages of using that centralized database. So if I didn't want to type this information in for each student, I could just go and select my student from a list. Now, I will admit, I have not populated this fake list with more than just a couple of names. But the point is that this list could contain your entire roster. And if I just wanted to look at, say, second graders, I could filter the list like that. If I wanted to look for a specific teacher, I could filter the list down and make this list very palatable, so I didn't have to scroll through thousands of children. So if I double click on this student, for example, you'll see that it types or puts the student's information right into the fields for me. And then I just have to decide, do I want to test color vision and whether or not they're wearing prescription glasses. If they're wearing them, I would obviously do that. If they're not wearing them, we want to know, we, the school, wants to know, the parents want to know whether or not this child forgot their glasses at home or whether or not they've been lost or broken. So that information is collected as well. There's a whole ton of functionality in here that I'm not going to go through in the interest of time. But what I want to do is give you an idea of what the game actually looks like. It's asking me to enter a student ID because this checkbox requires student ID is checked. So if I uncheck it, then I can get by with not entering in student ID. If it is checked, then I have to put one in for this student. So I'm going to do that. very creatively, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to say begin screening. So if I was training a group of parent volunteers or even older students on how to conduct a vision screening, that's the extent of the training. Because as you'll see, from this point forward, EyeSpy is going to tell you exactly what to do. So we're going to start the test by making sure that in this particular case, the student's not wearing glasses. Now, if they were wearing glasses, it would remind you to actually clean the glasses. Make sure that the child's wearing the glasses and that they've actually been cleaned. Now, the video game itself is very straightforward. So you can see that, and in fact, what you'll find is that most children just grab the mouse and they start to play the game. So they're going to select the student that they, the character that they want to play, and click the button. And if they're afraid to do that, this is where you would instruct them to just pick whoever they want to play and to continue the process. So that engages them. And then you can see the optotypes that are shown on the screen. In this particular case, the letters that are shown are based, in fact, in every case, the optotypes shown are based on the child's age. I'm going to demonstrate that to you for just a second. So if you look at this, there's an S, an R, Z, and a K. I'm going to stop the test for just a second. And I want to go back to the screen here. I'm going to artificially do something here. I just want to change the student's age, okay, and put them in first grade. Again, not wearing glasses. I'm doing this for a specific reason, and that is to say that I want you to see now, based on the child's age, how now the optotypes have changed. So I select my character, and now we're using a different set of optotypes. It's really important to realize that if your particular state has laws, requirements, or regulations around the use of optotypes, either universally across the board or based on particular ages, we can accommodate that through customization of the software in your particular state. So that's not a problem at all. So from this point forward now, it's a really simple matching game. In this case, they're just matching Leia symbols. If you notice, the symbols at the top never change their position. The only thing that changes is what optotype is presented at the bottom of the screen and the size of that optotype. And it's automatically adjusted on a multitude of variables, including the speed at which the child is responding, whether or not they're getting the answers correct. If they get answers wrong, in fact, I'll show you that in just a second, what happens when they get the answer wrong. Like, I'll get this answer wrong. I want you to notice what happens to the size of the optotype. Okay, I'm now going to verify. I'm in the comprehension phase right now, so I changed the optotype randomly. It could have been the same optotype. And now I am requiring the child to make multiple correct answers in order to statistically verify that they have good binocular vision and that they understand the game. So all of this is being done on your behalf. Now I'm going to patch the child's left eye. So now the right eye is being tested by itself. And I want to show you what happens. Let's say I get the answer correct. Okay, and now the child is either distracted or maybe they have a problem with their vision. They get the answer wrong. Now we make the optotype bigger. So we do an automatic reinforcement. This is something that you don't have to train anyone to do. The game is doing this for you. We automatically reinforce the child. We're automatically using statistics and reaction times to verify and measure their visual performance, again, not just binocularly, but each eye independently. So now I know that the right eye works, so I'm going to move the patch or the glasses to include their right eye. And again, I'm going through this a little bit quickly, and I apologize, but I want to make sure that I leave enough time that we're able to answer questions that you may have. So I'm just going to get the answers right. And I do want to mention real quickly that you can turn off the animation. So these cartoon animations are the positive reinforcements that we provide the child, but it's your prerogative. If you're screening older children and you don't feel the need to entertain them with cartoon animations, then you can turn that off as well. Now we're going to remove the patch from the student. Nothing on the child's eyes, and now you'll see we'll start to color test them. This is optional, or if we program it for your state to be mandatory, then it'll just automatically happen and the proctor won't have to decide whether or not they want a vision screen. color vision screen, more specifically. The first two color confusion palettes that were displayed are color vision plates that even a colorblind person can see. Again, we're doing this to verify comprehension. Now what we're going to do is introduce color confusion palettes that a mild to severe colorblind child will not be able to discern. And so what happens is with tremendous accuracy, we're able to tell you not what type of color blindness a child has, but whether or not they are colorblind. Now, it is possible that a child not pass this part of the test because they're right on the borderline. But it's still important for teachers and parents to know that there is something to look for here. So we're not, and by the way, all of you know that color blindness is not treatable yet. Technology is working in that direction, but it's not possible to correct color blindness. But again, academically, you don't want to be punitive to a child when you ask them to sit on a red circle and they have no idea what the color red is. So now we're going to do the last part of the test. And before I show you this, I just want to set this up because unlike a traditional wall chart where we know the child has acceptable visual acuity, what we know now after that short video game is that the child can perceive color, that's of value, but we also know not just that they have decent visual acuity, but we also know that the eyes are functioning in close reaction time to one another. What I'm trying to say is that at any point during the EyeSpy vision screening process that the child is going to be referred for a professional eye exam, we stop the test. That means that you're going to be vision screening children, and sometimes it's going to take 30 seconds for them to play the game, and other times it's going to take 2 or 3 or 4 minutes to play the game. Because everything is being customized. We're dynamically interacting with the child. The video game is interacting with the child, so the proctor doesn't have to. So this next part of the test is where we wrap everything up. We now know that the eyes are anatomically accurate, that they can perceive color, and now we want to make sure that the eyes are aligned, that they're pointing straight, and that the child is not suffering from either amblyopia, strabismus, or some other condition which could be neurological that is causing the processing of the visual input to not be processed correctly. And so we ask that you then put on the colored glasses, which obviously are provided to you, and we present them. Again, all of this is happening at a distance of 10 feet. So we're now assessing the child's ability to perceive depth at distance. Now, without your stereo glasses on, you're unable to see the shapes. It's a little bit unfortunate. Maybe some of you do have your 3D glasses, but the glasses that we provide you are not, they are not like standard 3D glasses. And actually, I'm going to get these answers wrong because I want to show you what happens. That's a diamond, but I'm going to get the answer wrong. And the reason why I want to get the answer wrong is because I want to show you that even if a child cannot see stereo at 10 feet, there is now an opportunity. We provide you a near stereo card, and what you then do is you show that stereo card to the child at 18 inches. And if they can see the stereo images with the glasses on at 18 inches, they have acceptable stereo processing and they do not need to be referred. However, if at 18 inches they cannot see the stereogram, the printed stereo card that we provide you, then you have to press the letter B, and that will, you'll see on this report that pops up on the screen, they should be seen by an eye doctor. And on the vision screening report, I don't know what your screen looks like right now if it's really hard to see, but the report tells the parents, it tells you all the details about that child's vision from a visual acuity perspective, color vision, and depth perception, which in this case we said that the child failed. So you can print this report, or you don't have to. You can print it at a later point in time. you'll notice that that child actually now doesn't appear on the student selection list because that was the only second grader we had. So if I clear the search, that's the remaining student on our student selection list. I'm going to get out of the list real quickly, and I just want to show you the report side of this. Again, there's a ton of functionality in the software, but I'm trying to keep us all on time. So this is the reporting section of EyeSpy. And this is where you have 24/7 access to all of your reports. So I'm just going to select a date range from last October to today. You can select any date range you want just by clicking a button, or you can type in your own start date if you want to go back to June of last year, for example. And I'm going to show the most recent, and it will pull up those screenings. And in fact, if you wanted to see the student that we just screened, that's the one we just did, you double click and there's their report. If you wanted it in Spanish, you'd press the S key, same report in Spanish, back to English. And there's a ton of things here that are going on. You can again, just like with the preloaded list, you could filter this based, if I just want to look at kindergarten, and then more specifically, I wanted to look at Smith. You can tell I'm very original in my naming. But if I wanted to, you know, filter this list down because I've got hundreds or thousands of students screened, I can do that filtering and sorting very easily. By the way, these are fake screenings, so I just want to let you know I'm not violating HIPAA by showing you, because these aren't real vision screenings. These are all fake. I also want to point out that if a child passes a vision screening, then that eye professional use only section doesn't appear on the report, because obviously there's no need. On those reports where children do fail the vision screening, that eye professional use does show up. And what the idea behind that is that it's to help assist with parental compliance. You provide this report to the parents, and it's different than a handwritten note that says, in this case, take your son, whose first name happens to be John 3. A little bit odd, but anyway, take John 3 to the eye doctor. So this is having the eye professional use only is at the request of the districts. This is one of the things that schools wanted. The other thing I'll point out on this report is, if you notice, it says 20/20 -1 for the right eye and 20/20 for the left eye. I want to point something out here. One of the other things that EyeSpy does, draw your attention to this button that I'm trying to highlight, this checkbox called Acquire Exact VA. If you want to acquire, EyeSpy has the ability to look at visual acuity from two perspectives. One is critical line, which means based on the child's age, you're just going to make sure that they can see at the minimum required visual acuity threshold for their age. Other states say, look, that's not what we need you to collect. What we need you to measure is their threshold visual acuity. In other words, see how small you need to test them all the way down to the smallest line that they can pass. And so if you check that box, Acquire Exact VA, that's what EyeSpy will do for you. And when you do that, that's when the report will give you that those annotations that are associated with threshold VA, which is to say the -1, +1. And if at some point you want me to explain what those different annotations mean, I can let you know that. So pop that into your checkbox if you want me to explain what those differences are. So, Monica, I've been giving everyone a drink out of a fire hose. I want to make sure you interrupt me if there's any questions that pop up at any time, okay? So you just let me know that? Okay. All right, so what does it look like to receive EyeSpy 2020? This is getting into some of the programmatic logistics, but I think it's just important to realize some of you, this is going to be perhaps of interest. Others of you are saying, hey, we're not quite there yet when it comes to receiving EyeSpy 2020, and that's fine. But just to let you know, what's going to happen is you're going to receive an email that's going to take you through a very specific process. And the process includes, for example, an attachment for your IT department. It is IT personnel are critically important, as I'm sure all of you know. They are critically important to the functioning of a district. Now, when I was in school, when the eye chart was invented in 1862, there was no IT department. But IT department is a critical component to the functioning of any school district. They're integral in literally every aspect of the functioning, in fact, including aspects that many people aren't aware of. So, having said that, there is an attachment for the IT department. The reason why I stress that is because IT needs to be involved right from the get-go. So even if the decision to use EyeSpy is made by someone other than the IT department, and even if they were not involved in that decision, they need to be brought into the loop right as early as possible. So please make sure to do that. And along those lines, the information that you'll be receiving in an email is going to include the need to disclose and to name names. In other words, there is a registration process, and during that registration process, you'll be including the names and emails of your IT staff, because we want to open up dialogue with them directly. Our commitment is to your students, but it's also to you, whether you're a school nurse, an administrator, or an IT personnel. We're committed to a smooth implementation, and so this is critically important that you understand, and that is why we want to collect that information so that that dialogue begins, to get facilitated. So if you want to look up close, it's very hard to see. So let's just talk about this. You register your school or your district. You enter in some contact information. This is all done online, by the way. Then you attend this webinar. There's an activation code that is provided to the appropriate personnel within your district, and then you receive screening supplies. And there's a litany of resources available on our website. And so what I want to do is I want to point out a couple of things that are, I think, important. In fact, if they weren't important, we wouldn't have put them on our website. So I apologize why I switched screens here. But I want to show you, this is our website. This is a live, this is our actual website. And Vision Quest 2020, as Monica mentioned on the onset, is the nonprofit organization that's responsible for the technical support and training for the EyeSpy 2020 product. So they put together a website that includes a ton of resources, regardless of where you fall into the vision screening implementation process. So, for example, there is a tab under resources called installation. So if I were an IT person, which I am, but not as qualified as IT, but I'm a computer guy. So I would come here to see, what information there is with regards to installation, and then I can actually install EyeSpy right from here. There's also a materials section. Much of the material that is included in this go-to training documentation that we, sent out to you upon registering for the webinar is also available and always being updated here. So for example, there's a complete user's guide. It's 60 pages, and it goes through literally every facet of the software. There's also a quick start guide, which is very helpful. If you go under resources, though, there's also something called a planning tool, and this is a really important and valuable tool. I don't necessarily want to go through the complete operations. I believe that for the most part it is self-explanatory, but the goal with the planning tool is to make sure that no one involved in the process is caught off guard. So what you do is you enter in information for all of your schools. Each screen allows you to do this for 10 schools at a time. So if your district has more than 10 schools, or you're using this tool to plan for screenings at more than 10 schools, you're going to have to break it up into phases. And so 10 schools at a time, and what you do is you put in the information shown. So whatever the name of your school is, I'm not lucky enough to have a school named after me, but how many individuals do I plan on, how many screening lanes do I plan on having? So this tells me that I've got 4 laptops with EyeSpy, and I've got 4 volunteers that are going to be helping to administer. Maybe I have more volunteers than I do laptops, and you can put that information in as well. You can check this box if you're going to be importing the student roster prior to doing the vision screening process. If you're not going to do that, uncheck that box. Put in how many students you're going to vision screen in each grade. So because we know, again, one of the benefits of collecting data at the aggregated level is that we know approximately how long it takes to vision screen when you have the students preloaded or not. So all of this stuff is dynamic, and then what happens at the bottom of the screen is it tells you exactly how many students you're going to be screening it at each school and how long it's going to take. So you can alter things. For example, we don't have 12 hours at this school. We have to do it faster. So this tells me we've got to up our game. We've got to find some more computers, and we need some more proctors. Right. And then you will also notice that when you, so obviously increasing the number of computers made a huge difference. But I want you to notice what happens. When we preload students, screening time goes down significantly. So on 550 students, you saved about an hour of screening time. So anyway, this is a planning tool that you print this out when you're all done, and it is kind of your guide for how you're actually going to implement the vision screening program. There's some other resources here as well as the library. I won't go through all of these things, except to say that for those of you that are interested in reading, for example, about our validation study, you can certainly find that here. But there's all types of information here, including assistance in finding exams and glasses, and there's resources for parents as well as schools. So please really do go to our website and poke around, and as always, if you have suggestions for improving or information that you'd like to see that'd be helpful, let us know. The only other thing that I'll point out is that this training webinar as well as other training webinars can be found here. So if, for example, you were talking to one of your colleagues and you said, hey, I want you to sign up for, to attend this webinar, they can click this button and it will take them to the sign-up page. Or if they don't have the availability of time to do that, then they can watch previously recorded webinars. And there's other instructional videos available as well. So I don't want to belabor the point except to say that it's a very important resource that you should feel free to go to. I'm going to skip through the next few slides quickly just because I've already done this, but that's the planning tool. Determining your screening model is one of the items on the planning tool that you'll need to ascertain, and it can be a screening model that changes from school to school, or it's something that can be done universally throughout your entire district. And there's a couple of different models, right? One is install EyeSpy on computers that are at the school, each and every school. The other model on the top right side is where you have a vision screening team that actually brings computers with them and travels from school to school internally, your own internal vision screening team. You could engage the services of an outside organization like a Lions or a Rotary to use EyeSpy within your school. And then, of course, another option, and this is particularly helpful for small schools, where you just do vision screenings one-on-one in, say, the school nurse office. So a couple of different options there. It's really, in fact, it's more flexible than this, but those are the four most common models. Again, I cannot emphasize enough, those IT gurus are an indispensable resource and they must be involved as early on in the process. Please don't spring this on them if you can control that. I understand that sometimes things are sprung on you, and that's just the nature of the beast, but please understand that they're integral in this process. The setup looks like this in most cases. I just want to point out that the child ends up sitting 10 feet from the screen. You might be saying, do I have to carry around a tape measure? And the answer is absolutely not. The mouse extension cable that we provide you is exactly 10 feet. So you actually use that as a measuring device when you're setting up the space. But please be aware that you do need 10 feet. In fact, if you look from the top down, this is kind of what it looks like in most cases. And I really just want to point out something is that, I apologize, getting excited with the mouse here. I just want to point this out, is that here's the children that are actually playing the game. And one of the things that we like to do, and I just want to point out a couple things, is that we like to have children that can observe what these kids are doing while they're doing it. Because that way, by the time this student comes and sits down in this chair and goes to play EyeSpy, they already know exactly what to do. The second thing that I'd like to point out is that traditionally what we like to do is start with the older kids. So if you're going to vision screen second grade, if those are the oldest kids you're screening, start with them, and then have the younger kids observing, so that by the time you get down to the youngest children, you're not having to spend an inordinate amount of time with them in that process. Does that make sense? I think it does, and if you have questions, you obviously just let me know. Okay. Are there any questions, Monica? Are we good?
No, I haven't had anyone with any questions yet. Maybe we'll have some at the end.
Okay. Hopefully they didn't all fall asleep with my monotone voice. I definitely have the face for radio, so. Okay, there's the 10-foot USB mouse extension cable. That's really important to know. I want to remind everyone that really helps out a lot, and it not only functions as a measuring device, but it encourages those of us that love technology to not try and use wireless mice. So I just want to point this out, that we get asked often, can I just use wireless mice? We don't recommend that for a variety of reasons. We are measuring the response of the child 1,000 times a second, and in order to do that, we really need a wired connection to the mouse to do that reliably. The second thing is that if you're vision screening 6 or 8 children simultaneously, there could be interference between these wireless devices. The newer devices are less subject to that, but anyway, just be aware of that. But you can see these are the supplies that we provide. So you've got the cabling and the glasses, the occluding glasses, an eye patch. The eye patch is used to occlude child's vision when they're wearing glasses. So you would just use that underneath. We also include Near Vision Card, which is an outstanding good light product. It's extraordinarily high quality, and it is something that you can use to measure near visual acuity if that's required. And by the way, you can enter those results right into EyeSpy, and they appear on your report. And the results from the near visual acuity assessment are used in the evaluation of the child's vision as to whether or not they're referred for medical follow-up. There's the Near Stereo Card. LEA Response Panel is something that is used when you're testing special needs children. But I can talk to anyone about that if they want to know. But basically what happens is, rather than have the child hold the mouse, some children cannot conform with that requirement due to eye-hand coordination. So you have the child point to the shape that they see on the screen on the LEA response panel, and then you play the game on their behalf. Okay, so there's a quick start guide that's included, and I just want to go through this very quickly. Not in a whole lot of detail, but it is really this simple. You put the computers on the table, you adjust the screen to make sure that there's no glare, seat the child 10 feet away, make sure that you've connected the mouse, obviously. You want to leave about 2 feet of space between the children. Make sure that each vision screening station has the supplies that they need, which includes the mouse and the glasses and the occluders. And turn on the computers and watch EyeSpy. So it's very easy to do, and there's videos on how to do that, just to let you know. Let's see here. I've already gone through the website with you, and I've already pointed out where the quick start guide and the user manual is available to you. So if you're not in physical possession of those at any point in time, you can get those from our website and download them. And they make great reading if you have trouble sleeping at night. Download that user manual, and it will work wonders. The resources and technical support, again, I just really want to point out that they are really important for you to be familiar with those. And there is a user forum that's available on our website as well. So what we're hoping is that over time, the community of users and experts, because here's what's important. The more you use EyeSpy, the more that you become an expert, and then you have something of real value to offer the community. So we want that user forum, if necessary, to become a place that you go. Almost done, so thank you for hanging in there. Want to point out that VisionQuest does offer training and support. That's what you're experiencing today, at least I hope. But here's the bottom line. You always have unlimited access to all of our web-based training materials and videos. You have unlimited email support, but there is a turn time on that of 1 or 2 days. We try to do it faster, but certainly within 1 or 2 days. You have unlimited access to the online training sessions that are recorded and made available. And you've got 1 hour of tech support. And typically, just to let you know, that's not always, but most often spent with IT, just answering some questions that they may have, as a group of people in general, IT, and maybe I'm very protective of them because I consider myself technical, but they, again, I hate to generalize, but like most of us, I think they really like to take pride, make sure that they're doing things right, and you know, so they usually appreciate the opportunity to make sure that they're doing that. So anyway, one hour of technical support. And contact information is important, because one of the things that we want you to do is feel very comfortable reaching out to us. You know, I understand that these webinars aren't the most personal venue to get your questions answered, but we are interested in making sure that all of your questions are answered, including today, by the way. But if something pops into your head after the fact, make sure that you reach out to either myself or Monica, who's our Chief Operating Officer, or our Director of Development, Katrina Frost. The emails are shown there. And again, you know our website. So after today, you will receive a link to today's recorded webinar if you, for some reason, want to share it with somebody or need to rewatch it. As far as staying connected with us, it's really important, because part of what VisionQuest's mission is education and advocacy. We are much more than just EyeSpy 2020 when it comes to protecting children from going blind and maximizing their academic performance, and also saving schools lots of money in the process. So please connect with us on Twitter, as well as our website, on Facebook and YouTube. It really just houses all the videos that we make available on our website. So if you're finding us on social media, Twitter and Facebook, that's very important to us. And that is how the word spreads that protecting children's vision is so important. So with that, and again, I'm open for questions, but with that, I want to thank you, because taking time out of your day and doing what you do as your chosen career is very impressive to us, and we're very thankful. And we get the pleasure, perhaps not as often as all of you, but we get the pleasure of seeing what impact this has had on children's lives. In fact, this beautiful young lady is one of them, where after her glasses, her life was actually truly changed. And so when we went back to visit this particular district, she was all about showing us the love, and it's something that we've never forgotten. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Monica and answer any questions that we may have, or if Monica, who's really my boss, decides what's going on, then she'll wrap up the webinar.
Thank you, Rich. So we're going to open up for questions. If anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask, go ahead and type them into the chat box right now, and we'd be happy to answer them. I know we have several different school districts online today. Okay, it looks like today we don't have questions, so Rich, that means that you did a great job of giving all the details and making sure that everybody understood clearly. So feel free to reach out to us at VisionQuest if you have any questions at all. If you're anything like me, at the end of the day, after I log off of something, I think, oh my goodness, I need to ask this question I didn't ask. So if that pops into your head later, feel free to email us. And we thank you for joining us today on our webinar. Have a good afternoon.